Yeah. So welcome to AMD class. So please mute your voices, your mics, all of you. Okay. So in the last class we have seen the rotor design of slip ring induction motor, where we saw the number of rotor slots, conductors per slot, total number of conductors, okay, area of conductors. So today we'll move towards the design of squirrel cage induction motor, okay, or design of cage rotor. Design of cage rotor. Okay. So in selection of number of rotor slots for slip ring rotor, we did not think much. We simply took the number of slots per pole per phase to be an integer value, and then we continued for selecting the number of slots, and then we fixed so many aspects of the rotor, and then we moved ahead with the design. Okay. But whereas for squirrel cage induction motor, the rotor design is not so easy, or not so simple, or not so straightforward, because the behavior of squirrel cage rotor is different, okay, with respect when compared to the behavior of slip ring rotor. Okay, the wound rotor behavior is different and the cage rotor behavior is different. Okay, with respect to certain combinations of rotor and stator slots, okay, the rotor, if it is a cage rotor, sometimes it will refuse to start, sometimes it may start but run at very low speeds, which is of no use for me to run the load. Sometimes it may exhibit large amount of mechanical vibrations, due to which there may be a physical damage of the shaft and the rotor itself, okay, or there may be a large noise generated during the operation of the induction motor. So these are the undesirable behavior of the rotor when the rotor is cage rotor, squirrel cage rotor. Okay, the reason for this is maybe a particular combination of rotor slots and stator slots, maybe due to the windings what we use, maybe due to the saturation of magnetic parts, okay, or maybe due to irregularities in the air gap. Okay, so these are the main 4 points due to which we may observe the undesirable behavior of the rotor of 3-phase induction motor, especially if the rotor is squirrel cage rotor. Okay, then the reason for vibrations, or the reason for noise will be mainly due to irregularities in the air gap, okay, due to certain pattern of slotting. Okay, so when we observe the main reason for due to which these all undesirable behaviors occur is due to the combination of rotor and stator slots, okay, in a particular way. Okay, if the rotor slots and stator slots are equal, if number of rotor slots and stator slots are equal, then there may be a possibility that the rotor will not start at all, it will refuse to start. Okay, we call it as cogging. Okay, with a certain combination of stator and rotor slots, the rotor may start running at subsynchronous speed, that we call it as crawling. Okay, now why this happens and how this happens, we need to look into. Okay, so before we go deep into these two concepts, okay, why cogging occurs, why crawling occurs, because this is one of the important part of our study, okay, which multiple times this question has been asked. Okay, to explanation regarding, they see in the analytical part of the study in the previous semesters of your motor studies, you studied it as very straightforward cogging and crawling. Okay, but here cogging occurs due to harmonic synchronous torques and crawling occurs due to harmonic induction torques. Okay, so why these occur, why these induction torques and synchronous torques are produced, we need to look into, okay, that aspect. So before that, what I thought today is, first we'll briefly understand about the torque. Okay, what exactly the torque, is in our induction motor, how it is produced, on what all aspects or on what all factors this torque is dependent upon, and how this torque is characterized in induction motor with respect to the speed or slip. Okay, we need not to worry so much in case of DC motors about this. Okay, we need not to worry so much about DC motors about this. Why? Because the speed of DC motor is almost constant, hence the torque of DC motor may be almost constant in case of shunt motor. In case of series motor, it is a square. Okay, torque is square times the load current. Okay, so there we don't find a what we can say so much complexity in understanding the motor characteristics in DC machines. Okay, but whereas in induction motor there is slight complex behavior of the motor, especially squirrel cage motor, and we should see what exactly is the torque and speed characteristics, what is the shape of the torque and speed characteristics, okay, what is the complete torque speed characteristics of the motor. Then we will move to the harmonic induction torques and harmonic synchronous torques. Okay, so I felt though it is not this already you have studied in your electric motors subject, but what I thought is better to have a small look back into that torque concept and then come back to our part of study. Okay, so starting from the fundamental operation of induction motor itself, suppose this is rotor with so many number of slots. Now I will very particularly talk about only cage motor. Okay, okay, so each slot consists of one rotor bar. We don't have winding here. Each slot consists of one rotor bar which are braced with end ring on both the ends. So if you take the cross section, we can't see the rotor bars there, we will see the end ring actually, but I have taken the rotor bar here. So if you want, you can show a end ring with some shade here. Okay, this is suppose an end ring. Now I have a stator. Though certain things appear repetition, please bear with that. Okay, because I need a flow. Okay, I need a flow. For that I am taking this part once again. We have stator slots. I will not write completely. Let us finish here. It has got winding. Stator has got winding, whereas rotor has got bars. Okay. Exclusively squirrel cage induction motor. This is the shaft with key. Okay. To this I provide three-phase supply. The moment I provide three-phase supply, a three-phase rotating magnetic field is produced in the air gap. That three-phase rotating magnetic field in the air gap will get linked to the rotor bars, which are short circuited on themselves at the end rings. Okay, we are bracing these end rings with the rotor bars, therefore it will form a complete short circuit structure. Now the rotating magnetic field phi r I represent is linking to the rotor conductors, and an EMF is induced in the rotor conductor. That EMF induced will circulate the current in rotor conductors, because now the rotor is short circuited on itself. Therefore, there is a rotor current IR. Okay. Now this rotor current will create its own flux phi r, Now this phi r and this phi r, resultant flux and the rotor flux, will interact with each other, and the motor starts rotating, the rotor starts rotating in the direction of rotating magnetic field, because as per Lenz's law it has to oppose its own cause. Okay, so the rotor will start rotating in the direction of rotating magnetic field. Now, due to which or not due to which, this rotor will be opposing its own cause to such an extent it will try to completely negate the cause due to which it is been the rotation has been produced. It means that the main reason why the EMF is induced in the rotor, the main reason why the EMF is induced in the rotor is the relative speed between RMF, okay, this is RMF, rotating magnetic field, and the rotor. Now initially RMF is rotating at synchronous speed, RMF is always rotating at synchronous speed, whereas the rotor is initially at standstill. Therefore, the relative motion between RMF and the rotor is RMF, the speed of RMF, that is Ns. Okay, so Ns minus 0 is Ns. So the EMF induced in the rotor is always maximum at standstill. So in the previous numerical, we have calculated the slip ring induction in slip ring motor, the slip ring voltage, and specifically that was mentioned at open circuit, because once it is short circuit I don't get voltage, it becomes 0, I get only the current. Okay, so the EMF induced or the voltage induced in the rotor is maximum only at standstill, because Ns minus 0 is Ns. Now as the rotor starts rotating in the direction of RMF, there the relative speed between RMF and the rotor starts getting reduced. Ns minus N will be less than Ns. Therefore, the rotor will always try to catch the synchronous speed, so that the moment synchronous speed is attained by the rotor, the relative speed can be made 0. Ns minus Ns equals to 0, and it will achieve the 100% opposition, the complete opposition of its cause. But if that is achieved, the rotor will never rotate again, because the torque produced will become 0. Because of relative motion between RMF and the rotor, there is an EMF induced or voltage induced in the secondary or the rotor, that is circulating the current, and that is creating the flux phi r. Now if the relative motion itself becomes 0, then the voltage induced in the rotor becomes 0, current circulated becomes 0, flux produced becomes 0, therefore speed will be 0. The motor will stop immediately the moment it reaches synchronous value. Therefore, this rotor, when always trying to catch the speed, it is always chasing the RMF, but it will never achieve to reach the synchronous speed value, and hence it will always slip back the synchronous value, that we call it as slip speed. So what is slip speed? Slip speed is the relative motion, simple relative speed, Ns minus N. This is slip speed, and percentage slip S is given by Ns minus N divided by Ns. Ns minus N divided by Ns. Okay. Now, the torque produced in any system electromagnetically, the torque produced in any system electromagnetically is always proportional to the current and flux. Is always proportional to the current and flux. Now the torque produced in the rotor of induction motor is also proportional to current and flux. But which current? Okay, that current is rotor current. That current is rotor current. So the torque produced is proportional to current. Let us take phi to be remaining constant, because supply is constant, voltage is constant, therefore the phi r is remaining constant. So let us take phi to be constant. Now the torque produced is directly proportional to current, but is current constant? or is current depending upon only the load? I cannot say the current is depending upon only the load, okay, because at no load also the current drawn by the induction motor is more than 50% of its full load capacity current. So current is not depending upon only the load. The rotor current is depending upon the rotor voltage, and rotor voltage is depending upon the relative speed, and relative speed is giving us the slip. So the torque produced is also depending upon the slip. So this is why I told the torque slip characteristics of induction motor is very important, or torque speed characteristic of induction motor is very important to understand when compared to the torque characteristic of any other motor. In torque characteristics of any other motor, there is no concept of slip here, there in DC motor, okay, because DC motor is a conduction motor. There is no problem. It is a D-linked motor. Generally, DC motor is also known as D-linked motor. It means that the flux that is created to produce the torque, okay, and the current that is provided to produce the torque, those are D-linked. There is no link between those two, because the field winding is producing the flux and the armature winding is carrying the current, okay, or the armature winding is creating the armature flux. So the field flux and armature flux are two different fluxes obtained from two different sources, okay. Therefore there is a decoupling or delinking of the fluxes in case of DC motor, hence it is not complex. But whereas in induction motor it is coupled flux. This flux phi is producing this current I. This flux phi is producing this current I. Therefore, to decouple the flux and current is very difficult in induction motor. Hence, induction motor becomes a little bit complex in understanding when compared to DC motor. Okay, but we are not worried about understanding induction motor here. We are simply knowing how the torque speed characteristics are, okay, and how that characteristic is getting modified due to the effect of slotting in the induction motor. Okay, that is what all I want to understand here. So now coming to the torque produced. Now this is a fundamental proportionality of the torque. To get the torque equation for any motor, I will start from this equation. Okay, torque proportional to flux and current. Okay, so when the current and the flux interact, actually this current is taken in disguise of flux only. Okay, interaction of current and flux means interaction of flux and flux. Okay, but I cannot represent the value of flux directly because it is more complex to represent it. So better I will represent it by current. Okay, so now the torque equation for induction motor is, and I will directly go to torque equation. I don't want to derive it. I don't want the derivation also. I will directly go to torque equation. So torque equation of induction motor is given by K into R2 into S into E2E square divided by R2 square plus S into X2E square. So this is the torque equation of induction motor. Okay. From this equation of torque, now I want to understand the characteristic of the torque. How the torque characteristics are obtained. Okay. So now I know what is the torque. Now torque is nothing but the rotating force. Okay. It is an angular force. Okay. Because I am getting the force on the rotating part of the motor, I am calling it as torque. Okay. Which is equals to force into radius. Force into radius. Okay. So force is produced on each conductor at the periphery, and each conductor will experience the force in the same direction. Each conductor will experience the force in the same direction. Therefore, the cumulative effect is that all the conductors will move in the same direction and the torque is produced. Okay, this is the concept of torque. So now we should see what is the range of the slip, okay, and at what value of slip what is the value of the torque. Okay, so then very easily I can plot the torque slip characteristics. Once I get torque slip characteristics, flip it, it becomes torque speed characteristics. To get the torque speed characteristics, first draw torque slip characteristics, because it is easy to draw torque slip characteristics from this equation. And once I get, you vertically flip, it will give you the torque speed characteristics. Okay. So what is the value of slip? Now S is equals to, I will write Ns minus N upon Ns. Okay, percentage slip. So percentage slip, it will vary from 0 to 100%. That is my percentage slip. Now at standstill, N is equals to 0. At standstill, N is equals to 0. Therefore, what is slip? Ns minus 0 by Ns, it is 1. The slip is maximum when it is at standstill. Okay. Now, at synchronous speed, N is equals to Ns, which it will never achieve. But we will see what while writing on paper through equations, there is no harm writing anything. Okay. Though N cannot achieve Ns, but I can assume on paper that it may, if it achieves, what happens? Then my S is equals to 0. Ns minus Ns 0. So when the induction machine is operating as motor, slip can never become 0. It can go to the minimum value possible, but still it will be greater than 0. Still it will be greater than 0, because induction motor rotor on its own doesn't have that capability to reach the synchronous speed. To make the rotor reach synchronous speed, I need external agency to support it to make the speed of rotor equal to Ns. So induction motor on its own will never achieve synchronous speed. So induction motor will never have slip equals to 0. Will never have slip equals to 0. Okay, so this we should first keep in mind. Now, to draw the characteristics, I should vary the slip now. Now what happens? See, why? Because all others are constant. Okay, all other things are constant. So therefore, I simply vary the slip because I want torque with respect to slip and see what is the nature of the curve. Okay. See, I am not discussing here about what is the what happens if R2 is varied, if R2 is more, if R2 is less, what is the maximum torque and all. I don't want all those things. I simply want to look into how the torque speed characteristics are drawn. I could have drawn directly, but I thought just to recall the things what has been already studied. Okay, and then we will move ahead with our actual contents. Okay, now let us take on y-axis, let us take the torque, and on x-axis let us take this slip. Okay, now let us S is equals to 0 and let it be S is equals to 1. If S is equals to 0, N is equals to Ns, this will be N is equals to 0. Okay, if slip varies from left to right, speed varies from right to left. That's it. Now when S is equals to 0, when I put S is equals to 0, in the sense I cannot put is equals to 0 because at S equal to 0, torque is 0. There is no doubt in that, because S, torque and S are directly proportional with respect to this equation. S is in the numerator. If I make S 0, torque becomes 0. There is no question of study. Okay, I have to keep still like the rotor. So I don't want to see what happens at S exactly equal to 0. Now suppose S is so small, it is more than 0, but it is negligible. Okay, now I will rub this. S nearly equal to 0. Not 0. I cannot make it 0. Because if I make S 0, study stops. When motor itself is not rotating, what to study in that? Okay. So now S nearly equal to 0. When S nearly equal to 0, my R2 square plus S x2e square becomes R2 square, because S is already very near to 0. Its square will be further very less, and R2 square will be much larger than S square x2e square. So at S nearly equal to 0, please don't apply the concept here. Don't make numerator nearly equal to 0. Again I am telling, if you make numerator nearly equal to 0, my study stops there. Okay, don't do that. S nearly equal to 0, this implies R2 square plus S x2e square is almost equal to R2 square, because this is very small. This is very small. Okay. Write the equation. T is equals to K R2 E2e square into S divided by R2 square. The terms in the bracket will remain constant. Okay. The terms in bracket will remain constant. Then torque is directly proportional to slip. So at very lower values of the slip, torque is proportional to slip. Okay, at very lower values of the slip, torque is proportional to slip. Okay, so I will take some range. To some extent, this is 0. Up to some value, I will take torque proportional to slip. Now let slip S be S dash, some value S dash. Okay. Now, as the speed is varying, the slip will also be varying. Okay. So when S is equals to 0, at S equal to 0, speed was N equal to Ns. Now I am decreasing the speed of the rotor so that it is coming lesser than Ns, lesser and lesser than Ns. Therefore my slip is increasing. Okay. Therefore my slip is increasing. So for the second case, S greater than S dash. Okay, I will take some reference point. Okay, it is not standard S dash. Some reference point to understand. Now S greater than S dash, this implies S has got some considerable amount of value. So please remember that X2E is much greater than R2. Okay, my reactance will be always very larger than the resistance. Okay, so my S X2E square will be greater than R2 square. Therefore, I will take T is equals to, therefore, my R2 square plus SX2E square will be nearly equal to SX2E square. Therefore, my torque equation becomes K into R2 into E2E square into S divided by S into X2E square. Now this S square into S2E square. One S in the denominator and S in the numerator will get cancel out. Therefore my T will be is equals to K R2 E2 square divided by X2E square into 1 over S. Again the terms inside the bracket will remain constant and my torque will be inversely proportional to slip. My torque will be inversely proportional to slip. So at certain range of slip, the torque was proportional to slip. Now for certain range of slip, my torque will be inversely proportional to slip. Okay, but it will not linearly decrease. It will take a hyperbolic shape of the curve and it starts decreasing. Okay, to some value. Now third case, when S is equals to 1. Okay, when S is equals to 1, what is my torque produced? Okay. When s is equals to 1 means my speed becomes 0. What is the torque produced? As per equation, I will get something that is my starting torque. Is it? When s is equals to 1, when s is equals to 1, my t will be equals to k R2 into, or before that, R2 square plus s into x2e square will be nearly equal to x2e square, because my R2 is much smaller than x2e square. Now s becomes 1. Okay, so R2 square plus x2e square will be nearly equal to x2e square. So therefore, my t will be equals to k into R2 into e2e square upon x2e square. Okay, upon x2e square. This is nothing but my starting torque. Okay, this is nothing but my starting torque. TST, it will be TST. Because at n is equals to 0, whatever the torque produced is the starting torque. Okay, so to improve the starting torque, my rotor resistance must be large. This is already well known fact for induction motor. That is why to have the better starting torque, we use slip ring induction motor. Okay, so this may be some starting torque, and starting torque is depending upon my rotor resistance. I don't go into the details. Some starting torque I will get. Okay, so this is my torque slip characteristics. Okay, this is my torque slip characteristics. Now what happens if I increase the speed of rotor beyond ns? Okay, now if I increase the speed of rotor beyond ns, what will happen? The induction motor starts operating as induction generator. Okay, up to some recent times, all the wind energy conversion systems, windmills, they used to use the induction generators, because induction generators can generate power at variable speed. Because wind is having no fixed velocity, therefore the rotor of the windmill may not be rotating at a constant speed, even though I have multiple gear ratios. Okay, gearboxes, obtaining a constant speed was very difficult. So even at variable speed, the power was generated until recently. We were using the induction generators as the standard generators for wind energy conversion systems. But these days, with advancement in the technology and applications, we use variable speed synchronous generators. Okay, instead of induction generators, we use variable speed synchronous generators for windmills. Okay, see, whatever the synchronous generators we use in our regular conventional power plants, okay, hydroelectric, thermal, nuclear and all, those are constant speed synchronous generators. Okay, whereas in windmill we use variable speed synchronous generators. Now, if I increase the speed of the rotor beyond synchronous speed, that is possible only by the connection of prime mover. Without connection of prime mover, I cannot go with the speed of rotor of induction motor even at synchronous speed. Okay, it will be always less than synchronous speed. So this is the maximum torque, Tmax. This is called stalling torque or pull-out torque or breakdown torque. Okay, that is Tmax. Okay. Now if n is greater than ns, I will get the same characteristics, but in third quadrant. Okay, but in third quadrant, where the torque is negative. How come the torque can be negative? It is only the understanding of the direction of the torque. In case of motor, this is called motor action. This is generator action. Okay, motor action, generator action. The torque can be negative because here I am inducing the torque, here I am providing the torque. That is the only difference. Here the torque is produced, here the torque is provided. Therefore the direction is different. Okay. Now what is S equal to 1 here? Okay. Now N equal to Ns. What is the speed here? What is the maximum value of slip that it can change in the opposite direction? Now S equals to -1. Okay. And here N is equals to 2Ns. Even when operating at generator, the maximum speed of the rotor what it can achieve is 2Ns. Okay. So this is the complete torque slip characteristic of an induction motor. Okay. Complete torque slip characteristic of an induction motor. Okay. See, this characteristic is obtained in the same way as that of motor characteristics, simply by applying minus. That's it. Simply by applying minus. Okay. Just to understand the concept, I want conceptual understanding of this aspect. Now, if I want speed torque characteristics, I am not interested in slip now. I am interested in speed. Flip the graph vertically, it becomes speed torque characteristics. Because if slip is varying from S to 1 and S to 0, speed is varying from 0 to Ns and Ns to 2Ns. Okay, so this is torque slip characteristics, complete torque slip characteristics. Okay, now next what I want is torque speed characteristics. Torque speed characteristics. Okay, now flip it vertically, that's it. Now this is S is equals to, N is equals to 0, okay, N is equals to Ns, and maybe N is equals to 2Ns. This is my torque speed characteristics of induction motor. This is torque minus torque. Okay, so this is speed. This is speed. Okay, so this is speed, and this will be slip. Okay. So with this N equal to 0, S equal to 1, N equal to Ns, S equal to 0, and this S equal to -1. So the range of slip is +1 to -1, that is 2. Okay. Now this is how the torque speed characteristics of the induction motor is been drawn. Now let us see what are harmonics and what they are doing in the induction motor. So what are harmonics? This part is not in the notes, this speed torque characteristic and the harmonic content. You please prepare the points or the notes based on this lecture video. Okay, because in that directly there is harmonic induction torques and harmonic synchronous torques in the cage rotor design. this part whatever we are seeing in today's lecture is not been there in the notes. Okay, for that you please prepare few points for understanding. This won't be asked in the exam. Okay, this is for understanding the process of understanding harmonic induction torques and harmonic synchronous torques. Okay, now what are harmonics? You have studied signals and systems. There you did so many examples on many of the signals. Now many signals are given. Okay, whatever may be the shape of a signal. Okay, you have calculated the even component of that signal and odd component of that signal. Yes, this has been done. For any signal we understood there in the signals and system subject that for every signal there is an even component and an odd component, provided if the signal is not pure even or not pure odd. If the signal is odd signal, the even components are absent. If the signal is even signal, odd components are absent. Okay, but if the signal is a general signal which is neither even nor odd, then that will be having even components as well as odd components. When I add all those components, then I get the complete signal. Okay, so x of n or x of t is equals to, you did xe of n plus xo of n, xe of t plus xo of t. Okay, so coming back to what harmonics mean is, in those signals what you have calculated, the components of the signal, okay, the components of the signal were not resembling the actual signal. Okay, if you calculate the odd component of this function, okay, it may not resemble this shape of the function. If your component, if it exists, if you calculate or if you find the even component of this function, signal and function are interchangeably used. If you find the even component of this function, if it exists, it may not resemble this shape. So therefore, the even and odd components of every function, I cannot call them as harmonics. Harmonics are having a particular definition. Harmonics exist for periodic waveforms. We call harmonics for periodic waveforms. Okay, why? Because for those periodic waveforms, for only those periodic waveforms where the components of those functions, whether odd or even, or if possible both, the components of periodic functions will resemble exactly the shape of the original signal or original function, that we call it as fundamental function. Okay, so what are harmonics defined as? See, you studied this harmonics in power electronics also, in analog electronics also. Okay, while studying the power amplifiers, you studied harmonics, especially in class B amplifier. Okay, we study there the total harmonic distortions in power amplifiers. In power electronics, it is full of harmonic content. Okay, any shape that is having some delay in its firing, if there is a firing angle for any circuit, then it is harmonically affected output. Okay, so for my understanding of harmonics is harmonically affected function or waveform means, as my study is with sinusoidal waveform, any function that is non-sinusoidal is harmonically affected. Now I have some function. Okay, this is harmonically affected waveform. But I know that this harmonically affected waveform has come from a pure sine wave. So when they say, for example, in induction motor I apply 3-phase voltage. Now 3-phase voltage I know is sinusoidal in nature. And I very well know that when that 3-phase voltage is generated in the generator, there were no harmonic contents. Okay, there were no harmonic contents. So I assume the generated waveform doesn't have harmonic contents in it. Okay, therefore it was a pure sinusoidal waveform. So this makes me very much confident to represent this waveform as a function of sinusoidal waveform. As a function of sinusoidal waveform. Okay. So my fundamental waveform, what I assume is a sinusoidal waveform with a fundamental frequency of 50 Hertz, because I know what is the frequency of generated voltage, that is 50 Hertz. I am not simply assuming that the waveform is sinusoidal. I know that waveform is sinusoidal because I have generated a sinusoidal waveform in the generator. So the voltage that is coming to induction motor is a 3-phase sinusoidal generated waveform. Therefore, with this generated knowledge of generated voltage, I directly assume or I directly consider the fundamental wave is a pure sinusoidal wave having the frequency of 50 Hertz or generated frequency. In India it is 50 Hertz. Okay, in many countries it may be different. So my fundamental wave is always sinusoidal wave of f Hertz frequency. Now what are harmonics? Harmonics are the integral multiples of the fundamental waveforms which get superimposed on the fundamental waveform and get added. Now if I want to get the components of this harmonically affected wave or function, then when I go for analysis using Fourier analysis, because Fourier analysis will give me the harmonics. Okay, Fourier transform or Fourier series. Okay, if it is Fourier, you are now studying the signal processing also, DSP. You know when to apply Fourier series, when to apply Fourier transform. If the function is periodic, I apply Fourier series. If the function is non-periodic, I apply Fourier transform. Okay. Now here in this case, I know that sinusoidal voltage is fundamental. So simply by application of Fourier series analysis, I will get to know what are the frequency components, those are superimposed on this fundamental wave. Then I get to know the components may be 3rd order, 5th order, 7th order, 9th order, 11th order, so on. All are sinusoidal waveforms only. All are sinusoidal waveforms only. Because sine wave is a pure odd function. So only odd components will come out. Hence, the shape of components will be the shape of fundamental. Okay? Fundamental is pure sine wave of cycle 360 degrees for p number of poles. Then the component waveforms, 3rd order component, 5th order component will also be sinusoidal waveform of period 360 degrees with not p poles, with number of order multiplied by p poles. So for 3rd harmonic there will be 3 into p poles. For 5th harmonic 5 into p number of poles. Now what exactly happening is, virtually if you see in the rotor or in between rotor and stator in the air gap, the number of poles are getting multiplied for each order harmonic. So F is equals to what? Pn by 120. So for fundamental there are p poles, but for 3rd harmonic it will be 3 into F. It means 3 into p. Okay. So for each harmonic waveform, the number of poles are getting integrally multiplied by the order of harmonic. Now what happens when these kind of harmonics are induced? See, the reason why harmonics are induced may be many. Okay. The reason why the harmonics are induced may be many. There may be various reasons. Okay. I am not worried about what are the reasons here. I just want to know what happens if harmonics are there. Now this is a fundamental waveform. This is say omega t. I have 3 half cycles or 1.5 full cycle. This is fundamental. With frequency equals to F. Now, the 3rd order harmonic. Okay. 3rd order harmonic means what? In one cycle of fundamentals, I will get 3 cycles of harmonic components. That's it. Frequency will be 3 times. Frequency is 3 times means what? If number of cycles per second is 1, if one cycle is in 1 second, then in 1 second I get 3 cycles. So 3 cycles per second is my frequency, 3 times the frequency. So I will get so frequency will be multiplied by 3, but the magnitude will go less and less. This is third order. Third order with frequency equals to 3 into f. What about fifth order? In one cycle there will be 5 cycles. That's it. Okay, so the magnitude of fifth order harmonic will be lesser than the magnitude of third order harmonic. The magnitude of third order harmonic will be lesser than the magnitude of fundamental or first order. First order is always taken as fundamental. Now why not there are second order and fourth order? Because sine is an odd function, even components will not exist for that. Okay, likewise seventh order, ninth order, so on. Okay, so generally we don't consider after seventh order because the magnitude becomes very small and it is become negligible. Now see here, for the first half cycle, if I add all these three, do I get exact sine wave? Definitely not, because from here to here, see the variation, here both are positive, but here some are negative values, so it may not be sinusoidally varying, and frequency is also different. When I add multiple functions of different frequencies, then the resultant waveform will not be the shape of fundamental frequency or fundamental waveform. Okay, so this is all about the harmonics. Okay, now what happens with these harmonics, how these are affecting, we will see in tomorrow's class. Okay, tomorrow at 8:30 we will discuss how these harmonics are playing in the performance of induction motor. Okay, then we will go with the design of the rotor. Okay, once we understand what happens with harmonics, then design of rotor is almost finished. Only then we have to follow the guideline and select the number of slots. That's it. Okay, so the next part we will see in tomorrow's class. Okay, so this lecture I dedicated completely to rebrush and recall the things which already you people have studied. Okay, so that the forthcoming contents what we want to discuss or what we wish to discuss should be with no confusion or with no, if you get any doubts, definitely I will be there to solve. That is a different issue, but still when we want to learn the things, it is better if the related aspects are clear in our mind. Okay, so please don't mind for taking this one lecture extra just to make the fundamentals which you already have studied to rebrush it. Okay, it is for your help itself. Okay, so if possible, on the day when I don't have class for you regularly, if I could record any extra video or if I could record video, I will record it and I will send it to you the link, so that this extra lecture will get compensated with respect to the actual syllabus that we had to cover in the class. Okay, hope this was informative and useful. Thanks for joining. In the next class we will discuss about harmonic induction torques and harmonic synchronous torques. Okay, so thank you for joining.